Greetings, dear ones. It is Friday, the 21st of January, 2022. And it has been a very interesting week for many people. And many people are still in the, I don't generally utilize the term mood. But there is an overlay of mood, if you will, an energetic that has been going on throughout the week, probably longer. But I'm curious as to whether you've been experiencing what, rarely used word, melancholy. If you've been experiencing any melancholy this week, or just kind of a grayness. Now, here on the East Coast, our weather has been gray in many ways. We had a lot of cloudy days with snow, ice, rain, mixture therein. So it could definitely affect one's view and one's emotional state. But it's been more so. And yes, again, the rest of the country, a lot of storms, a lot of grayness, cloudiness, coldness, which is usually, connected to gray. And I keep using the term gray because that is a shade of black and white mixed together. And it is an area where both things in regard to duality are true, or both things blend and come together. And that would be very accurate for this week. There's been a lot of bad news. And granted, in general, news is not as good as we would like it to be, but then on top of that, good news doesn't sell the way that bad news does. If you hear a headline about something drastic or radical, it's generally, you're going to tune in and see what's going on. Whereas you may not, if there is a wonderful story or a positive story or something that lifts and enlightens. So sales of newscasting, news programs has become a very big part of our world, and there's a lot of money invested in it. So it's kind of a way to perpetuate an idea or perpetuate a way of being, kind of tearing things down. And yes, journalism in its purest form is revelatory. It assists us in being able to see and understand and learn and grow. But I don't know how much the commercial media is really doing that anymore. You have to actually make effort to find different angles than the typical of the larger news systems. And again, that doesn't mean just believing someone because they say so, but doing your own research. And yes, I know that takes effort, but you can get very adept at it, being able to discern. And that's really important, being able to discern. And that's what we're talking about today, the different boxes that we find ourselves in. How many of those boxes are self-imposed? How many of those boxes are societally imposed? How many of those boxes you chose as a soul to be able to explore and experience something? So these boxes, so to speak, I'm using that term to kind of explain or elucidate some of the confinements and restrictions and rigid forms or rigid ways in which we are finding ourselves. And quite a few clients this week broke through many of those boxes. I had one client who literally with her defense system had created a great fortress. I mean, a huge fortress with wall after wall after wall and ramparts and towers, and it literally energetically was built in that way. And through quite a bit of work, we were able to get around or actually get past some of those walls. And she experienced herself in a way that she, I think, never has, but certainly hasn't since she was very, very young, if even younger, around the time of birth, etc. So her being able to experience herself without that fortressing around her, and being able to be seen and felt and experienced and honored and valued in that, not just by me during our session, but by her own being and her guides and teachers and masters and the divine. So it was a very, very powerful and life-changing session for sure. And other clients this week, it was very interesting. We're looking at the ways in which that they have confined themselves by definition, or by staying in a situation when the deeper parts of themselves, their inner wisdom, is saying, no, you must change this, you must leave, you must get out of this box. One new client this week actually has come out sexually, but then is still confined physically in her relationship with her husband, in her position in her family, just boxed in many ways, and has been looking at or choosing to be able to break out of all of those different boxes to become more of who she is, who she feels herself to be, who she knows down deep inside she is. So these boxes, many of these boxes that we live in or surround ourselves with and often hug to us, are those that we've chosen as a soul, as a definition, our human definition. And many of those, there's a couple different reasons why we would choose a very confining, very restrictive, very, very limiting box in which to live and grow, or at least get older, develop. And oftentimes that as a soul is to experience that. For example, someone who lives in a militaristic way, or grew up with very, very rigid rules and very firm lines that were not to be crossed, and then likely followed that through in the military by going into the military and being part of a system where there are very, very specific rules, confines, lines, and you're pretty much, you're very much in that box, unless of course you have chosen to grow, but the system itself is a box. So why would someone choose something like that as a soul? To really experience it, to actually feel what it's like on every level of their being. Emotionally and psychologically being boxed in as a child, and then, living a life where there is a great deal of rigidity and limitation. And again, there is no wrong, there is no right. Souls choose millions of different experiences. There are many other definitions of being in boxes or very limited, very small ways of living. And again, one reason is to explore that as a soul, add it to your vast knowledge, be able to live another existence in the exact opposite. And then sometimes a soul chooses to be born into and experience that, or many different types of boxes, in order to transmute and evolve that particular aspect. Now, most of the clients that find me are people who are working on a mastery level of a soul project, a soul piece. So those people are here not merely to change or transform their life, but to actually transmute these pieces in order to have a wide-reaching effect on their family lineage, on their culture, the culture that they're living in, the culture that they're 2, 3, 4 different cultures they're connected to through both sides of their parents, and even more so at a deeper level to change human nature in this evolutionary process we're going through. So they are grand tasks, no matter what one chooses, whether it is to experience the most limiting and confining forms of human life, or whether it is for the sole purpose, S-O-U-L and S-O-L-E purpose, to have that depth of wounding experience as a child, to then as an adult with the strength and intelligence and capacity of an adult to transmute that into its highest frequency, which is someone living out of the box, someone living out of the box of religion, society, parental perspective of what is good, what is not good, their own beliefs and misperceptions, or mistaken beliefs and misperceptions, and distorted truths about themselves that we take on as children in order to survive, in order to try to get what we want and need and desire and expect. And so this process of breaking out of those boxes we're doing on a larger scale globally. We're doing it certainly in this country. And so we're experiencing right at this moment the opposite. Things are getting more narrowly defined. We are going back to, in some ways, more rigid thinking and less acceptability, and only one way is the way, only one way, one religion is the right religion. Only certain groups are allowed to succeed and prosper. These are very old, rigid ideas, very confining, that keeps people down, or the people, the masses. It keeps people down, and it keeps them oppressed and controlled. And this evolutionary process is to achieve exactly the opposite. That each person is following their own inner truth, that each person is able to express creatively, work-wise, in the way that most fits them. We are breaking out of old ideas and boxes of autocracy and tyranny and dictatorships. even though it may not look like that at the moment, because there's such a strong pull in the opposite direction to go back to that. And those are very, very powerful boxes of an entire country or an entire people. So it is in your own personal exploration and transformation and transmutation and breaking down and breaking out of those boxes that we are able to change the global boxes. One of the things that unfortunately, well, let me back up. I mentioned the word melancholy at the beginning of today's session, and that is an interesting word, and it comes from the ancient Greeks when there was an assessment of the humors of a person, humors, and this was to assess their health. It was also a means of assessing their personality and what type of personality, depending on the overabundance of a particular physical aspect in so far as the fluids in the body. Now, melancholy comes from a combination of two different types of bile, B-I-L-E. And bile is a very interesting fluid in the body. I encourage you to look it up. And we have black bile, which is a reflection of the liver, and yellow bile, which is something that's produced by the gallbladder. Both of them, of course, very linked. And I just recently listened to a short video by a chiropractor who has many videos on YouTube, Dr. Berg, and he was speaking about the bile in the gallbladder and bile ducts, and anyone that experiences a great deal of shoulder pain, particularly on the right hand side, should look into the possibility that the bile ducts are not functioning at their optimum because they are overfilled or don't have the capacity due to the amount of sludge that is in the bile duct. So, we're looking at, and I know if anybody has experienced when you finally throw up if you have food poisoning or some sort of virus or flu, and there's nothing more to come up, and then you encounter that bile and that horrific taste, and that experience. And so the body is so very, very connected to our emotional state, to our psychological state, and expressing our spiritual state. So that bile, that sludge, that inability to process that which we take in, foods, etc., is also reflected in our society right now. We have a lot of bile, a lot of dark energy, a lot of the yellowish sludge, so to speak, energetically, because it needs to be brought to the surface, yes, and it needs to be looked at and it needs to be worked with in order for us to evolve. We've been packing that down and overloading it with, in the case of the body, certainly foods, our emotional state, pollutants of all sorts. And one of the things that really affect that are plastics and the microplastics and the amount of microplastics that have been found in every part of the world and in our bodies. So, what do we do with that? If we are able to and this is what I've found over decades of working with clients, when we are able to transmute those pieces on a psycho-emotional basis, on an energetic and spiritual basis, then the physical presentation, whether it's in the body, whether it's in your life, whether it's in our world, our society, our world, can disappear, can dissipate, because it's no longer needed as a trigger or a catalyst to look at that piece and work with it. And, again, when we're talking about bile, whether it's dark bile or it's yellow bile, these are ugly, disgusting, uncomfortable, type of aspects of our human existence. And that's certainly true when we experience it in the body, and it's certainly true in our lives. I've had a couple clients this week becoming very, very aware of ways in which they thought they were being good or beneficent, or in actuality avoiding hurting someone, when in fact those actions born out of distortions of childhood were actually harming others and certainly themselves. One client, it was fascinating. I'll read to you what she concluded after a session this week, which was fascinating. And this is someone who has done a great deal of work with me on herself, and has come to know the process and view her work, and it literally has changed her life, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, creatively, etc. She writes, "Thank you, Andrea. Last night was quite difficult to get to sleep. My ego was a little flared up, not getting that anger across and out of me, and, to its full extent, all the way into the backyard. LOL. But this morning I used that anger to feel more, and to feel more into my power, and to be more dedicated to myself, and not to put any rose-colored glasses on anymore. I'm more determined now than ever." Actually, rose-colored glasses is not what I do. It's me not wanting to feel my anger, because I use the energy behind being a Pollyanna in hopes to help transform the other so I can be happy. That was my currency and what I thought was a superpower. Thank you very much. Again, this is very, very powerfully shifting for this client, and it has released her from the box of staying in different situations, relationships primarily, where she put up with and kept allowing more and more and more of what did not feel right, but she was compelled to make it better for that person, to adjust herself, to suppress it, etc., in order to keep them happy and wanting to be with her. So the level of freedom that she has experienced as a result of the work that she's done, the adoration, she has come to actually love and adore herself, that such that she would not harm herself by doing anything that hurts herself or others. She wants to care for her body and care for her life because it's important to her. She's come to truly hold in preciousness who she is, with all of her. And this is someone, among many other clients, who have had to look at the ugliest parts, that what we're talking about, rising up this at this point in time in our society, the ugliest parts, the deepest sludge darkness that is within each one of us, and that we're seeing on either the political or the corporate or individual, or rather, different groups within our society here in the United States and around the world. Look at, kind of one of the beautiful nature beings who are here helping us this week are mountains, and being able to see from that wider view. And when we're in our boxes, it's as if we have blinders on and we can only see what is within that box. And as we break away those boxes, as clients do this, they see such a wider view of themselves, of the world, of spiritually and energetically what we're doing here and this Project Earth. So interestingly, again, a client yesterday ended up having to reveal to herself through our work, through our session, or it being revealed, a very ugly truth about her part in a relationship, her marriage, and had a very physical reaction, of course, upon seeing this, upon coming to the realization of this. And as does synchronicity and hypersynchronicity, it just so happened that for the first time in a very, very long time, I was able to sit down and enjoy an episode of Star Trek. And those of you who have worked with me or have listened to these talks before know my connection to Star Trek and the Star Trek world, and how in many ways, and how it reveals much about our world and even our personal work. And the episode last night was a beautiful one, very, very powerful. If you can get beyond the 60s stuff and kind of the misogynistic aspects of it, it was all surrounding beauty and ugliness, and what is beauty and what is ugliness. And the title of it is fascinating in and of itself. The title is there in truth no beauty? And ultimately what came to the foreground is Captain Kirk had to kind of shake someone up and force them, quote unquote, to see their ugliness, to see the way in which they were harming another with their own, in this case it was, kind of an insane jealousy and envy. And as she transformed that, she ultimately received what she so deeply desired and became even more beautiful, so to speak, in many different ways. I encourage you to find it. I know there's plenty of streaming sources where you can find the original Star Trek, and maybe watch it once just for the story of it, and to walk through it, and then to watch it again and to really feel into what is ugliness and what is beauty. Because as we reveal that ugliness within, we have the opportunity to transform it, to transmute it, evolve it, individually, as a culture, as a country, as a planet. And at the very end, there is an absolutely beautiful, I must read it because I don't want to misquote, but the person that I referred to that had to look at her own darkness, her own ugliness, Kirk hands her a rose, and she said, "I'm sure there's a thorn on it." And he says to her, "I've never met a rose that didn't have one." And that is true in all of us. And she says to Mr. Spock, "I understand, Mr. Spock. The glory of creation is in the infinite diversity." And Spock responds, "And the way our differences can be combined to create meaning and beauty. So those boxes that I was referring to, as far as religions, as far as ways of thinking, as far as governments, as far as society, as far as the way we work in corporate America or around the world, the confining hours, there's so much that this pandemic has actually kind of forced us to see, just like Kirk forced this woman to see the ugliness and the darker side of herself. And we are having such powerful energetics pouring onto the planet and the earth itself and aspects of nature, helping us break out of these boxes, to tear down the sides and the tops and even the underneath of boxes. So I encourage you to really explore the different boxes you live within. And, or better still, on the 29th, I'm doing an all-day retreat where we're going to be, in many ways, breaking down those boxes on a physical basis, a mental basis, an emotional basis, and even a spiritual basis. So please look for the event and or contact me, DM me to sign up and register. Or better still, give me a call, contact me, and we can find out how on a more accelerated basis you can do this in one-on-one sessions. So, and again, looking at these boxes all week and the fortress and the different ways that clients have placed themselves in very confining, limiting, rigid, restrictive ways. And two things came across my desk I thought very, very significant. One was that there is a new company that has created a machine that will take plastics, and in the United States we generate, this was a shocking amount to me, I had heard many amounts before, but just, I guess it's so blatantly in one small sentence, that the United States generates 42 million tons of plastics per year. 42 million tons. Where are they going? They are in offshore barges. They are going into our environment. And this beautiful company, it's called Bifusion, has figured out a way to take pounds of plastics and fuse it together to make blocks for construction. That instead of a cinder block, this plastic can be used. It is very adaptive to all different types of building and construction, and it is one of the hopes for the future. One, of course, is to only use recyclable plastics, which, by the way, again, the other thing that came across my desk are the a group of scientists from several different universities have created a way to make plastics out of sugar that are completely and utterly recyclable or dissolvable. These are changes that we need to make in order to live and continue to be a species on this planet. The other very, very powerful articles were surrounding the sixth mass extinction, and that our biodiversity has broken down to the extent that we may not be able to repair it. And these boxes that we've lived in of what is the way for, in other words, we believe that in order to have the life that we want, the luxury that we want, the ease that we want, it must be done in the way that it has been. by utilizing resources, by having economies based in petroleum and gas and coal, non-renewables. And so there's so many different boxes that we find ourselves in. I really encourage you to explore both your personal, family, cultural, country, global boxes, and start looking at ways to come out of the box, come out of all of those boxes, thereby allowing us as a species to come out of the box and see from the high mountain what can be. There are breakthroughs every single day for new ways to live, new ways to do things. And the sludge and the darkness that is being revealed and being seen and being, if we choose, to be addressed. The other beautiful aspect of nature this week that has come forth to very, very powerfully help with clients and certainly in our container today is ice. Ice in its glacial form, and the many ways that ice appears and certainly has been very present, as I mentioned earlier, in our lives for much of the country this week. We also have a very, very powerful future view coming forth. And for right now, I'm going to invite you to just find those sits bones. If you're familiar with this way of going within and being able to travel within your inner universe, I encourage you to get situated on those sits bones with your feet flat on the floor, ideally, and just very, very gently allowing you to become aware of those, your wings, your scapula, the shoulder blades, and just very, very gently being aware of them. Bring them a little bit together and let them slide a little bit downward. Not rigidly, but just softly being aware of them and allowing them to position themselves where they actually should be. This enables your chest to open up, more space for your diaphragm, and it allows your skeletal structure to take over so that you don't have to hold yourself up, but instead allow yourself to sink down and within you, receiving the information, the guidance, the actual experience of another level of you, another width of you internally. For we're going down into your universe. And as I've mentioned so often before, going up and out through the third eye, or upwards and outwards, brings you to higher mind. But this practice allows you to experience your wider being. This accumulation of knowledge and experience and depth and breadth and width of other existences, all which are held within you and which are able to be accessed through your energy field where it interfaces with your body. And an inner wisdom through your innate that is a direct line of communication to your soul. Helping you on or in the steps to completing or advancing you on the project that you laid out for yourself as a soul this lifetime. And so in this practice, it is not beneficial to leave out the ugly, so to speak, or the dark, or the uncomfortable, but instead to allow all, not only that I've mentioned, but any awareness on your part of boxes you live within, any sludge or bile, so to speak, that has been causing pain, discomfort in your life, be it physically or in relationships. For in this mix of that which is uncomfortable, painful, ugly, sludge, there is also incredible beauty. For it is all part and parcel of the evolutionary process. As was evident with so many clients this week, that beauty of the courage to look within and see that which is unpleasant. Giving them the opportunity to transform or transmute or even metamorphosize. The beauty of advances in science and ways to live that do not cause the pain and destruction. To our planet, to the other members of this earth. For as that character in the Star Trek episode said, the glory of creation is in the diversity. That each one's truth, each one's expression is valid, has the right to be, and in the combination thereof lies great beauty. Therefore, breaking down those boxes as confining, rigid, restrictive, limiting boxes of our own personal, individual, perhaps it is ancient cultural boxes. We are good, they are bad. Perhaps religious boxes. This way is the only way. And those that do not believe this way or follow this way must be punished or killed. So many boxes. Old ways. Maintaining and holding in place a way of being that is not sustainable, that is not able to take us into the future. Allow yourself to feel, sensate, experience the wide open possibilities and potentials of you the freedom, the fluidity, the flow. And not confined, imprisoned, restricted, or limited. What would you do? Who could you be? What will you create? Outside of the box. And as you feel and sensate and experience your inner verse, where there are no boxes, there are no limits, there are no lines, there are no confinements. That is the invitation. That is the opportunity. That is the potential. Right now, this moment in time, to individuate and in that unique expression the glory of creation in its diversity. Combining and blending in great beauty and unity. For this is the truth. We each are individuated beauty. With all our so labeled ugliness. For it is all divine, and therefore neither one nor the other. But mutually divine. And allowing your energy field and your wider self to be your guides in your own very individual way of moving from a less physical experience back to the more physical experience of this plane, this three-dimensional plane. Individuated, but united as well, for there is much more that unites us than does separate us as a species. Please let me know in the comments below. This will be posted certainly here on the Universal Alchemy group, which I invite you to join because these are going to be shifting over to that site, along with, again, any awarenesses, any daily updates on what's going on. I will be doing readings in that group when we gather together on Fridays. So if you'd like to be a participant in that and have your energy field read as far as maybe what's going on currently, or maybe what other worlds, realms, existences you are connected to and have access to, whether it's the magical realms, whether it is other aspects of our universe, etc., our earth. Everyone has their own particular connections that they aligned or set up to be aligned with for this existence. So, or if you'd like to talk some more about the possibility of doing individual work, I'm happy to discuss the current options for that. And in the meantime, please know that it is with the deepest of honor, gratitude, and love for your presence on this planet. Be well. Bye-bye.